Right. Now, very quickly, now that China is clearly, I mean, right now you have the East that is the only part of the world that has genuine growth right now. And China is a big part of it. And I wanted to ask you the difference between the United States and China, and I asked this when I was at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Government, is China's always been mysterious, unfamiliar, bad PR, let's face it. Unlike the United States, in many parts of the world, they may not be perceived as the good guys, but they do try and play the big brother in many parts of the world too. They make sure that their allies are, either they have treaties with them. Now, China is very different. My question, how should the Philippines treat China with a territorial dispute in the West Philippine Sea, where the Philippines feels China is not respecting all the UN agreements, all the modern day agreements that's been passed. China is looking at old maps, their historical maps, believing that it is the South China Sea. And they don't want to go to the UN. They don't want to tackle there. They only want it to be tackled bilaterally. A small country like the Philippines and a big superpower like China. Tell us.
Well, you put it very well. I think that is the difference, actually. That is the difference, which is, you know, the Chinese have this, give this enormous weight to history. So
they do.
Yeah.
Because they don't really, you said it in your book, they're not a colonizer.
Historically,
yes,
no.
They're not.
Well,
that's interesting.
I'll just correct you on one point,
yeah.
Slightly on this. They did, under the Qing dynasty in the 17th century, they did expand in their own continent.
Only.
Westwards.
Yeah.
So you could call that a form of internal colonization across the continent, like America did, in fact.
Yeah.
America moved westwards.
Yeah. But not expansionist like Europe.
No overseas maritime-based colonial empire.
Okay.
I cannot think of a territory that the Chinese have ever colonized.
Yes, yes. So tell us.
So they do not have a colonial tradition.
So what do we do with the West Philippine Sea problem?
Well, I think that.
So you said China pays a lot of attention to history.
Yeah, yeah.
Their history.
Yeah, because you know they were the Middle Kingdom, they were the center of the world, the land under heaven, the center of civilization. So they tended to look down upon
other nations.
Peoples,
yes,
other
yes.
peoples. They did. They didn't colonize them, but they tended to look down upon them. Why would they? I mean, they were opposite to the Europeans. The Europeans wanted to, get as many territories as possible, and subject the peoples there to civilization.
Yeah. So what would be the approach to China? I'm curious.
Well,
would it be a bilateral approach or a multilateral approach?
Well,
since you know them so well.
Well, I think that I've got something I want to say before that.
Okay.
And that is that the Philippines must recognize which way the world is moving and what is happening to their own region. They need the big picture, not starting with the little picture, which is some rocky islands.
I love it how you said
I mean, you can't.
Go on.
You can't start thinking about the future of the Philippines in those terms, because this region is being absolutely transformed in a remarkably short space of time by the rise of China. To be frank with you.
Please be frank. I want frankness.
Historically speaking, forget about America in this region. It is in decline. It's in rampant decline.
My God, you are the first person I heard that has said this. Okay, but you are aware of the ties between the Philippines and the United States.
Yep.
The Philippines knows more about a Malaysian professor at the World Economic Forum who I interviewed when I was in Davos had said this. Karen, the problem with the Philippines is you know more about the United States than you know about your neighbors. And it made me think, he's probably right. Filipinos understand more about being American than what it is about being Malaysian or Indonesian, because everything's so diverse, or Chinese.
It's true. I mean, one of the great problems for the Philippines is, much more than any other country in this region, is that you were colonized by the Spanish in the 16th century, and then you were colonized by America at the turn of the last century for 50 years. So the experience that the Philippines has been overwhelmingly a kind of Western-orientated experience.
Yes.
So, and that doesn't go away just because you got independent 50 years ago, because
it's in the mind.
The mind has been colonized.
I agree.
the mind thinks America, the mind thinks the West.
Yes.
It doesn't think, I am part of Asia. What is Asia? Which it is part of Asia. And
Yeah.
there are many traditions in the Philippines which are Asian. You know, there's many influences which are Chinese.
Yes.
There's many peoples that are derived in your country derived from the Chinese.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is absolutely critical for the Philippines, is that it must think, look, the future of this region, for the indefinite future, is going to be more and more bound up with China. So therefore the critical relationship, not just for the Philippines, but for Malaysia, for Thailand, for South Korea, actually Japan in the longer run, every country in this region is China.
Okay.
What sort of relationship are we going to have with China? How do we engage with China? How do we lever our relationship with China to our best advantage? Because actually,
I'm not sure
this
it
is
is.
this is a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah.
This is a huge country growing at the, at the speed of light.
Yeah, the Philippines, you mean?
No, I'm talking about China.
Oh, China, but the Philippines is also growing.
Yeah, but the point is that when you've got a huge population of 1.3 billion people growing that quickly,
that 10%
you think of
a
all
year.
the opportunities it's opening up for the Philippines.
Yeah.
But the Philippines is still looking the wrong way. It's still looking the wrong way. Not that way, that way. Yeah.
You know what I love? If the U.S. Embassy is watching right now, well, you're leaving today.
Yeah. I'm getting on the first plane back.
No, but I
escort me?
love your thoughts. It's it's very provocative, and I think it's what a lot of people also need to hear, because Hong Kong is an hour away.
It's nothing.
Is nothing from the Philippines. So many workers in Hong Kong.
I know many Filipinos.
Many Filipinos. So many people go to China, do business. I mean, whether it's a small-scale entrepreneurial business, but I don't think the Philippines has ever really grappled what you just said in those terms, in terms of big-time partnerships with China.
This is the crucial question, and the problem is that because of what you said, the Western-centric mentality of the Philippines, for very good historical reasons, means that the Philippines is within Southeast Asia and ASEAN a laggard, relative laggard.
Yes.
It's behind the curve when it comes to the rise of China, the involvement of China, the recognition of China, the importance of trade with China. Philippines is more or less at the back of the.
My God, you are really something. You are frank.
So this is a.
So the Philippines is laggard compared to its Asian neighbors.
Yes,
That's what you're saying. Absolutely. Go.
Yeah.
Southeast Asian.
Yeah. So what needs to happen is that the Philippines must recognise what is happening, recognise which way the future's going and what the future's going to be like, and start thinking of itself in that context. It must think. Now, that brings me to the islands.
Yeah.
What the Philippines shouldn't do, and I think it's been sorely tempted to do it, and if I may say so, been a little bit down that road, is to think, well, we can sort out the Chinese with our American allies, and anyway, they're encouraging us to be a little bit vocal on this question. And so,
That's true.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I'm afraid that's what's happened, I think.
Yeah. And how does that affect?
Well, what's happened is that, the relationship with China has deteriorated, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And the Philippines is, in a way, been a bit of a stalking horse for the American pivot in the region. And I don't think this is good news for the country, actually. Because if what I'm saying is true, which is the future in this region for the Philippines is China, they're making the wrong point and asking the wrong questions. The question is not how can we have an argument with China, but how can we get on with China? Now, that doesn't mean that the Philippines should abandon its territorial claims. I'm not arguing that at all.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that the Chinese claim is more legitimate than the Filipino claim. I mean, I'm an agnostic about it. It's a difficult problem to sort out. But it's not an impossible problem to sort out.
But is that what you're saying? It's the manner.
The argument over the island should not be allowed to derail the relationship with China, to poison the relationship with China, to sour the relationship with China. That is so short-sighted. That is so backward-looking. That's so regressive. The Philippines has got to find a way of handling the island question in the context of a rapprochement with China, of engagement with China. And it can.
It can.
It can and it will.
Yeah.
If it's got the political will, of course it's possible. Look, take another claim, which equally important claim.
Japan,
Malaysia,
the islands.
No,
Oh, okay, let's do something else.
Japan's a completely different issue.
All right.
East China Sea, different issue. Malaysia. Malaysia's got a claim on the Spratlys, a powerful claim on the Spratlys. They've been in dispute with China for a long time over it. They have a very good relationship with China.
Yeah, that's true.
They have a very good relationship. Mutual respect. The Malaysians have a lot of time for the Chinese and vice versa.
Yeah.
So the island dispute does not need to be poisonous.
But
so
it's gotten to that point.
My recommendation is stand off, boys and girls.
Stand off.
Don't think of the big picture. Don't abandon the claim. Pursue the claim, but pursue it in a way which recognizes that your relationship with China is going to be hugely important.
Yeah, because you know what we've had in the last few weeks? We've had a boycott on Chinese products coming from Lloyda Lewis, a very respected Filipino-American philanthropist. You have that. You have rallies in the Chinese community here, and it came to a point that some of our Chinese-Filipino citizens were worried for their safety. So it's gotten to that point where there's been like even a standoff at the Scarborough Shoal at one point with Chinese ships, fishing vessels, and a Filipino Coast Guard.
You know, it's not surprising perhaps this has happened, but that, you know, that the Philippines, because of its long relationship with the United States, should feel itself to be almost a proxy for the United States. Stop it.
I love it.
Stop it.
Have you?
Stop it.
Stop it.
It's time to grow up. It's time to think Asian. It's time to get the big picture and recognize the historical trend. Otherwise, you'll always be at the rear, at the tail in this region.
Okay. All right.
And I just want to add one thing.
No, we're not yet done.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
You want to add first? Go.
Well, I just wanted to say it is perfectly possible to reach a settlement with China on the islands.
It is?
Yes. I mean, it's a difficult question, but it's possible. There's not going to be a war over the islands. The East China Sea and Japan is a different question, entirely different question.
Okay.
There will not be war in the South China Sea with China over these islands, with any of them.
Okay.
With any of the claimants.
All right. Okay, we'll take a quick break. I'm loving this discussion. I hope you are. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with global best-selling author Martin Jacques. We'll be right back. The book is When China Rules the World. Tweet your questions.